The intelligence briefing started like every other routine survey mission. Commander Vex stood before the holographic display in the observation deck of the Stellar Dominion, watching as the blue and green planet rotated slowly beneath them. Earth. Designation: Class M Habitat World. Population: 7.9 billion sentient bipeds. Threat level: pending assessment. Sir, the bioscanner results are coming through now, Lieutenant Cora announced from her station, her three-fingered hands dancing across the control interface. We're cataloging the dominant species first, then moving down the predator hierarchy. Vex nodded, his mandibles clicking together in what passed for satisfaction among his kind. The Zephron Empire had perfected this process over 3 centuries of galactic expansion. Find a world, scan the life forms, identify the apex threats, neutralize them, conquer the inhabitants. Simple, efficient, profitable. What's the status on their apex predators? Vex asked, folding his forearms behind his back. Cora's eyes, all 6 of them, widened slightly. It's unusual, Commander. The dominant species themselves seem to have eliminated or contained most of the serious threats. We're detecting large carnivores called bears, tigers, lions. But they're mostly isolated in protected zones. The humans have basically neutered their own planet's defense systems. A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. This was going to be easier than the Proxima campaign. Excellent, Vex said. What about the weakest creatures? I want a complete spectrum analysis. Sometimes the small ones carry diseases or venoms that complicate occupation. Running the scan now, sir. Cora's fingers flew faster. Filtering for low-threat organisms. Smallest predators. Minimal defensive capabilities. Limited range. She paused, squinting at her screen. Got something. Marking it as Subject 001. Small carnivore. Weight: approximately 7 to 14 kilograms. No venomous capabilities detected. No apparent armor plating. Solitary hunter. Should be completely harmless. Bring up the visual, Vex commanded. The hologram shifted, and suddenly they were looking at a creature that seemed almost comically unthreatening. It had a stocky body covered in coarse fur, short legs, and a face that looked perpetually annoyed. Its claws were visible but not particularly impressive compared to the great cats they'd already cataloged. That's it, Lieutenant Brace said from the weapons station, his voice dripping with contempt. That little thing? According to the database we pulled from their public networks, it's called a honey badger, Cora reported. Scientific name, Mellivora capensis. Feeds primarily on insects, small rodents, honey. The humans have even made jokes about it on their entertainment networks. They call it, let me translate this correctly, adorably fierce. The bridge erupted in laughter, adorably fierce. These humans and their strange sense of humor. Mark it as a non-threat, Vex said, waving one hand dismissively. Continue with the scan. I want data on their military capabilities, population centers, resource distribution. Sir! The voice came from Ensign Plex at the communications station, and it carried an edge of panic that made everyone's attention snap toward him. We're receiving a distress signal. It's from the advanced reconnaissance team we sent to the surface 3 days ago. Vex's posture stiffened. Put it through. Static crackled, and then a voice, ragged and terrified, filled the bridge. This is Scout Captain Mira. We need immediate extraction. Repeat, immediate extraction. It found us. It got through our perimeter defenses like they weren't even there. Jorvik is dead. Senna is dead. It's still coming. It won't stop. It just keeps... The transmission cut to silence. The bridge had gone absolutely quiet. Every officer stared at their stations or at the hologram of Earth, trying to process what they'd just heard. Mira was one of their best scouts. Her team had been equipped with plasma barriers, personal shields, and enough firepower to take down a charging Gorelian battle beast. Get me a location on that transmission, Vex snapped, and prep a full tactical squad for surface deployment. Heavy weapons, environmental suits, the works. Coordinates locked, Cora said, her voice tight. Sending them to the deployment bay now. What do you think got them? Brace asked, already moving toward the exit. One of those bears? Maybe a big cat they didn't account for? Vex didn't answer. He was too busy trying to remember if they'd scanned the surface properly, if they'd missed something critical in their assessment. But the data had been clear. Earth's dangerous fauna were contained. The humans themselves were the only organized threat, and they hadn't even detected the survey team's presence. So what in the 17 hells had killed 3 trained Zephron scouts? 6 hours later, Lieutenant Brace stood on the surface of Earth for the first time, and he hated every second of it. The gravity was slightly higher than he preferred. The atmosphere had an odd smell, something organic and green that his filters couldn't quite eliminate. And the temperature, even in this temperate zone, made his scales itch beneath his combat armor. "Spread out," he ordered his squad of 8 soldiers. "Standard search pattern. We're looking for survivors or bodies. Stay alert. Whatever took down the scouts could still be in the area." They were in a region the humans called the Kalahari, a semi-arid expanse that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The scouts had been investigating mineral deposits for potential mining operations. It should have been a simple 3-day survey. No human settlements within 200 kilometers, no apparent dangers. "Sir, I've got something," Private Nexel called out. She was crouched near a rocky outcropping, her weapon trained on a dark shape, on the ground. Brace moved closer, and his blood went cold. It was Jorvik, or what was left of him. The scout's armor had been torn open, not sliced cleanly by claws or teeth, but ripped apart with brute force. Deep gouges ran across the metal plating. The body itself. Brace looked away quickly. "What could do this?" Nexel whispered. "Our armor is rated for Class 7 kinetic impacts." "Keep scanning," Brace said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Find the others, and for the love of the ancients, stay sharp." They found Senna 10 meters away, in similar condition. Her weapon was still clutched in her hand, discharged. Whatever she'd been shooting at, she'd hit it multiple times, but it hadn't stopped. "Motion detected!" Corporal Dren shouted from the perimeter. 30 meters, bearing 117. Every weapon swung toward the coordinates. Brace activated his helmet's enhanced vision, scanning the rocky terrain. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then, movement, low to the ground, fast. "Target acquired," he said. "Something small, quadruped. Wait, bring up the bioscan from the ship, cross-reference with local fauna." His helmet's display flickered, and then text appeared. "Match found. Subject 001, Mellivora capensis. Common name, honey badger. Threat level, minimal." "You've got to be kidding me," Brace muttered. The creature emerged from behind a rock, and for a second, Brace almost laughed. It was the same animal from the hologram, that stocky, unimpressive little thing that they'd dismissed as harmless. It stood there, maybe 30 centimeters tall at the shoulder, staring at them with dark eyes that seemed to radiate pure, undiluted hatred. "That thing killed 3 scouts," Nexel said incredulously. "It's tiny. Weapons free," Brace ordered. "We're not taking chances. Light it up." 8 plasma rifles fired simultaneously. The air crackled with energy as bolts of superheated matter streaked toward the honey badger. The ground where it stood erupted in a spray of dirt and vaporized rock. The barrage continued for 5 seconds, enough firepower to reduce a small building to atoms. When the smoke cleared, there was a crater where the creature had been standing. "Target eliminated," Dren reported. "No life signs detected in the blast radius." "Good," Brace said, feeling his heart rate starting to slow. "Let's collect the bodies and get back to the ship. This planet gives me the creeps." They'd taken maybe 3 steps when Nexel screamed. The honey badger came out of nowhere, a blur of fur and fury that moved faster than Brace's combat-enhanced reflexes could track. It wasn't in the crater. It hadn't been vaporized. Somehow, impossibly, it had dodged or survived the barrage, and now it was on Nexel. Her armor might as well have been made of paper. The creature's claws tore through the reinforced plating like it was ripping into soft fruit. Nexel's scream cut off abruptly as the honey badger found her throat. "Fire! Fire!" Brace was shouting, but his own soldiers were frozen in shock. Private Hexar finally raised his weapon, but the honey badger had already moved, launching itself at Corporal Dren with a guttural snarl that sounded like pure rage given voice. Dren managed to get his weapon up, managed to fire point-blank into the creature. The plasma bolt hit it square in the chest. Any normal animal, any sane creature would have died instantly. The honey badger didn't even slow down. It crashed into Dren like a missile, and they both went down in a tangle of limbs and fur and spurting blood. Fall back to the shuttle!" Brace was running now, his training abandoned, his dignity forgotten. He could hear his squad behind him, their boots pounding the earth, their breathing ragged with terror. Something hit him from behind. Not the honey badger, one of his own soldiers, Hexar, stumbling in his panic. They both went down, armor clanking against rock. Brace rolled, trying to get his feet under him, and that's when he saw it. The honey badger stood 10 meters away, covered in the blood of his soldiers. It wasn't even breathing hard. It looked at Brace with those dark, merciless eyes, and in that moment, Brace understood something fundamental about the universe that his people had missed in all their centuries of conquest. Size didn't matter. Weapons didn't matter. Logic didn't matter. Some creatures were just too mean to die. The honey badger took a step forward, and Brace found his voice. "Shuttle! Emergency extraction! Code Omega! Code!" His words were cut off as the creature charged again. Commander Vex stood in the medical bay, looking down at what remained of his tactical squad. 3 dead on the surface, 5 injured, 2 of them critically. Lieutenant Brace was strapped to a medical table, sedated, his body covered in bandages and regeneration gel. The medical officer said he'd survive, but he'd never be the same. Something in him had broken down there. "Explain it to me again," Vex said quietly. Dr. Phoenix, the ship's xenobiologist, adjusted her spectacles, a nervous habit she'd picked up from studying human culture. "Commander, the bioscan wasn't wrong exactly. The honey badger is small. It does primarily eat insects and honey. But what our sensors failed to account for was, how do I put this? The creature's absolute refusal to acknowledge its own limitations. Speak plainly, Doctor." Phoenix pulled up a hologram between them. It showed the honey badger, but now annotated with data streams. Its skin is incredibly thick and loose. When something grabs it, the animal can literally turn around inside its own skin and counterattack. It has resistance to venom that would kill creatures 50 times its size. It can emit a noxious secretion that temporarily blinds and disorients predators. But more than that, Commander, it has something our scanners can't quantify, which is attitude, Phoenix said simply. Pure, unfiltered aggression. The humans have documented cases of honey badgers attacking lions, hyenas, even Cape buffalo, animals that could kill it with a single swipe. And the honey badger doesn't care. It attacks anyway. It was documented fighting off 6 lions simultaneously. The lions gave up first. Vex felt something cold settling in his stomach. One animal did this. Just one? Just one, Phoenix confirmed. We checked the genetic markers on the remains. All the damage was inflicted by a single honey badger. The humans have a saying about this species. Honey badger don't care. At first we thought it was humor. Now I understand it's a warning. A warning we ignored, Vex said bitterly. He looked at the planet rotating below them, that peaceful blue and green sphere that was supposed to be an easy conquest. Pull up everything we have on Earth's fauna, every single species. I want full behavioral analyses, not just bioscans. If we missed this with one small predator, what else did we miss? Cora approached from her station, her face pale. Sir, you need to see this. We've been analyzing human entertainment broadcasts, trying to understand their culture better. I found this. She activated a small display. It showed a human-made video, some kind of documentary. The narrator's voice was dramatic. The honey badger, nature's most fearless animal. Watch as this lone individual faces down a pride of lions. The video played. Vex watched, transfixed, as a single honey badger scattered a group of lions twice, 3 times its size. The big cats, each one powerful enough to kill any Zephron soldier in single combat, retreated from the small mammal. The human narrator continued. The honey badger has been known to delay leopards from feeding for hours. It has no natural predators. It has been recorded fighting off entire packs of wild dogs. It eats venomous snakes for breakfast. When bitten by a highly venomous snake, it simply passes out for a few hours, then wakes up and continues eating the snake. Scientists believe the honey badger's ferocity is its primary defense mechanism. It's not the strongest, it's not the fastest, but it is, absolutely, undeniably, the meanest. The video ended. The bridge was silent. They knew, Vex said softly. The humans knew, and they tried to tell us. They made videos about it. They joked about it. They studied it. And we ignored it because our scanners said it was small. Orders, sir? Cora asked. Vex looked at the planet below, at the billions of humans living there, at the honey badgers and bears and lions and tigers and who knew what else lurking in the wilderness. He thought about his injured soldiers, about Mira and her team, about how his people had conquered 47 worlds without ever encountering something like this. Send a message to the fleet, he said finally. Tell them we need 6 more battle groups before we attempt surface operations. And tell them we drastically underestimated the threat level of local fauna. What classification should I give it, sir? Cora asked. Vex looked at the small hologram of the honey badger still rotating in the center of the bridge. That stocky little body, those dark, hateful eyes, that complete and utter lack of anything resembling fear or self-preservation. Apex predator, he said. Classification, extreme danger, approach with maximum caution, and add a note in the official report. What note, sir? Size means nothing, attitude means everything, and whatever else Earth may throw at us, we do not, under any circumstances, engage the honey badgers again, not without orbital support. Lieutenant Brace stirred in his sedation, and even unconscious, he whimpered. Vex understood completely. Somewhere down on Earth, in the Kalahari Desert, a honey badger finished its meal and moved on, completely unaware that it had just changed the course of an interstellar war. Or perhaps it was aware. Perhaps it just didn't care. 3 weeks had passed since what the crew now referred to as the Kalahari incident, and Commander Vex had aged a decade in that time. The reinforcements had arrived. 6 battle groups, each containing 3 warships, 24 assault shuttles, and enough firepower to glass a small continent. The Zephron High Command had not been pleased about the request, but after reviewing the combat footage and casualty reports, they'd approved it without question. Now Vex sat in the strategy room with his senior officers and 2 specialists who'd been sent specifically to deal with Earth's unique challenges. Captain Thorne was a veteran of the Rigel campaigns, a scarred warrior who'd fought in close combat against some of the galaxy's most vicious species. Dr. Yara was an expert in psychological warfare and had written 3 dissertums on breaking enemy morale through strategic intimidation. Neither of them looked particularly confident. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Captain Thorne said, his gravelly voice filling the room. You retreated from a creature that weighs less than my boot? With respect, Captain, Vex replied, keeping his voice level. I invite you to review the combat recordings, frame by frame if necessary. Thorne pulled up the footage on his personal display, and Vex watched the captain's expression shift from skepticism to confusion to something approaching horror. The honey badger moved through the tactical squad like a natural disaster, ignoring wounds that should have been fatal, attacking with a speed and ferocity that the cameras could barely track. By the void, Thorne muttered. It took a direct plasma hit and kept fighting? For another 47 seconds, Dr. Phoenix added from her seat. We've since learned that honey badgers have an incredibly high pain tolerance and an apparent inability to recognize when they're outmatched. The human research describes it as pathological fearlessness. Dr. Yara leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Fascinating, so the creature's primary weapon isn't physical capability, it's psychological. It simply refuses to accept defeat or retreat, which creates a feedback loop of escalating violence until its opponent breaks. Exactly, Vex said, and that's not even the worst part. There's a worst part? Thorne asked. Vex nodded to Cora, who brought up a new display. It showed a map of Earth with hundreds of red dots scattered across multiple continents. These are confirmed honey badger territories. Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, the Indian subcontinent, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. And according to human wildlife organizations, their population numbers are actually declining due to habitat loss. You're telling me there used to be more of these things? Thorne's hand unconsciously moved to his sidearm. Significantly more, according to historical records, Phoenix confirmed. And that's just honey badgers. We've been doing deeper analysis on other Earth species. Did you know humans keep some of these predators as companions? They call them pets. They have creatures called dogs, descended from wolves, that they've bred for thousands of years. Some of these dogs weigh over 90 kilograms and have bite forces that exceed our body armor's pressure ratings. And the humans keep them in their homes, Cora added, with their offspring, for protection and companionship. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. What kind of species domesticated apex predators and gave them access to their young? There's something else, Dr. Yara said quietly. I've been studying human cultural outputs, their stories, films, literature. They have an entire genre dedicated to what they call survival horror. They create entertainment around the concept of being hunted by superior predators. For fun. That's insane, Thorne said flatly. Is it? Yara pulled up an image of a human standing next to a massive predatory shark. This is called shark diving. Humans pay currency to be placed in underwater cages near creatures that could swallow them whole. They call it recreation. And look at this one, mountain climbing. They scale vertical rock faces thousands of meters high, where a single mistake means death, because they find it enjoyable. Vex felt a headache forming between his eyes. What's your assessment, Doctor? My assessment? Yara sat back, her fingers steepled. Humanity evolved on a death world, Commander. Not in the traditional sense of extreme environments, though Earth certainly has those. No, they evolved in an environment filled with megafauna predators, venomous creatures, and catastrophic weather events. Their entire evolutionary history is one of being prey that refused to stay prey. They didn't develop natural armor or claws or venom. They developed persistence, ingenuity, and apparently an absolute disconnection between their survival instinct and their decision-making process. You're saying they're like the honey badgers, Vex said. I'm saying the honey badgers are like them, Yara corrected. Or perhaps they both evolved in the same crucible, learning the same lesson. Sometimes the best defense is such overwhelming offense that nothing wants to fight you twice. Captain Thorne stood abruptly. So what's the plan? We can't conquer a planet where the wildlife alone requires orbital bombardment, and we certainly can't occupy it if the native species is, he gestured at the displays, functionally insane. We adapt, Vex said, though the words tasted like ash. We've been studying human behavior, their tactics, their history. They've conquered their own world despite these challenges. We need to understand how. I can answer that, came a new voice. Everyone turned to see Lieutenant Brace standing in the doorway. He looked terrible, his scales pale, his movements stiff from healing injuries. But his eyes were clear, and he carried a data tablet. Lieutenant, you should be in medical, Vex said. I should be dead, sir, Brace replied, moving slowly into the room. We all should be, but I've spent the last 3 weeks doing nothing but studying humans and their planet. I think I finally understand what we're dealing with. He placed the tablet on the table, and a new series of images appeared. Humans don't conquer through superior firepower or physical dominance. They conquer through persistence and adaptation. Look at these. The first image showed ancient humans hunting a creature called a mammoth. Massive beasts covered in fur and wielding enormous tusks. The humans looked tiny by comparison, armed with simple stone-tipped spears. But they'd brought the mammoth down through coordination and relentless pursuit. They invented persistence hunting, Brace continued. They would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They weren't faster, they weren't stronger. They just refused to give up. The next image showed humans in harsh Arctic environments, wearing animal skins for warmth. They conquered every environment on their planet. Deserts where the temperature exceeds 50 degrees. Frozen wastelands where it drops below -40. Jungles so dense with predators that every step is potentially fatal. And they didn't just survive in these places, they thrived. They built civilizations. More images flowed past. Humans climbing mountains, diving to ocean depths, exploring caves, crossing oceans in wooden boats. They explore, Brace said. Constantly, compulsively. They're curious to the point of self-destruction. They invented space travel and immediately started planning missions to other stars, knowing they might never return. They found the deepest trench in their ocean and sent someone down just to see what was there. "What's your point, Lieutenant?" Thorne asked, though his tone was less harsh now. "My point, sir, is that we can't beat them through conventional warfare. Every historical record shows that humans fight harder when cornered, that they innovate under pressure, that they turn their own weaknesses into advantages. But more than that," Brace pulled up one final image. A honey badger and a human standing near each other. The human apparently photographing the animal. They respect ferocity. They admire it. They make videos celebrating it. They don't fear the honey badger, they're fascinated by it. They study it, document it, share stories about it. Vex stared at the image, something clicking in his mind. "You're suggesting we approach them differently." "I'm suggesting we don't approach them as conquerors at all," Brace said. "Because if we try to invade, they won't just fight back with their military. Every human who's ever gone mountain climbing or shark diving, every person who's watched their nature documentaries and laughed at honey badgers fighting lions, they'll all fight. And they'll fight like they have nothing to lose because that's what their entire evolutionary history has taught them to do." Dr. Yara was nodding slowly. "He's right. Every psychological model I've run suggests that invasion would trigger what humans call a total war response. They've done it before in their own history, mobilized entire populations against existential threats, and given their capacity for innovation under pressure, they'd find ways to hurt us," Vex finished. "Ways we haven't imagined." "Probably," Brace agreed. "But there's another option." "Which is?" "Trade, diplomacy, alliance." Brace pulled up economic data. "Earth has resources we need. They have biological diversity that could advance our medical science by decades, and they're already reaching out into space. In another century, maybe less, they'll be coming to us whether we like it or not. Wouldn't it be better to meet them as partners rather than enemies?" Captain Thorne laughed bitterly. "You want us to negotiate with them? After what happened to your team?" "Especially because of what happened to my team," Brace said firmly. "Sir, we went down there with weapons and armor and the assumption that we were superior. And a single animal, one of thousands on that planet, taught us otherwise. Now imagine what 7 billion humans could do if we gave them a reason to consider us a threat." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a thoughtful silence. Vex looked around at his officers, seeing the same calculation happening behind their eyes. How many ships would it take to occupy Earth? How many soldiers? And even if they succeeded, how many would die to honey badgers and sharks and dogs and whatever else that death world threw at them? "The High Command won't like this," Vex said finally. "The High Command didn't face a honey badger," Brace replied. Vex almost smiled. The lieutenant had a point. "Very well. Begin compiling a cultural database. Everything we have on human diplomacy, trade protocols, first contact scenarios. Dr. Yara, I want you to design a communication strategy that emphasizes cooperation over dominance." Captain Thorne. "You want me to stand down the battle groups?" Thorne said. Not entirely. Keep them on alert but out of orbital weapons range. Show strength but not aggression. If we're going to do this, we need to appear powerful enough to be worth their time, but not so threatening that we trigger that total war response. And if it doesn't work? Cora asked. If they reject our overtures? Vex looked at the planet below, at that beautiful blue and green world that had seemed so peaceful from orbit. Then we leave. We mark this system as restricted and tell the High Command that Earth is off limits until we develop better understanding or better technology. Because the alternative, he glanced at Lieutenant Brace's scarred form, the alternative isn't worth it. The first contact happened 3 days later in what humans called the Mojave Desert, far from major population centers, but close enough to communication networks that news would spread quickly. Vex had chosen a small delegation. Himself, Dr. Yara, Lieutenant Brace, and 4 honor guards armed but instructed to keep weapons holstered unless directly threatened. The human delegation was similarly small. 5 individuals, 3 of whom appeared to be government officials based on their formal attire, 1 who carried recording equipment, and 1 who wore military insignia but no visible weapons. They met in the early morning, the desert sun just beginning to heat the sand. Vex stepped forward, his forearms spread in the Zephron gesture of peaceful intent, and spoke the words that Dr. Yara had helped him prepare in the human language called English. Greetings. We come from the stars with no hostile intent. We seek dialogue and understanding between our peoples. The lead human, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward in response. I'm Secretary Martinez of the United Earth Council. We've been tracking your ships for weeks. Care to explain why you've been scanning our planet without permission? Direct, confrontational, but not aggressive. Vex appreciated that. We were conducting standard reconnaissance for, he paused, choosing his words carefully, potential resource acquisition. We have since reconsidered our approach. Reconsidered, Martinez said, and something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. Would this reconsideration have anything to do with the incident in the Kalahari 3 weeks ago? Vex felt his mandibles click in surprise. You know about that? Commander, we have satellites that can read license plates from orbit. You think we didn't notice when one of your shuttles made an emergency extraction while leaving 3 bodies behind? She crossed her arms. We also have the remains of your soldiers. We've been studying your technology. It's impressive, very impressive, which makes it all the more interesting that you lost a tactical squad to a honey badger. There was a long moment of silence. Then, to Vex's shock, the human started laughing. Not mocking laughter, but genuine amusement. The other humans joined in, even the military officer cracking a smile. I'm sorry, Martinez said, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, it's not funny. People died. But honey badgers? Of all the things on this planet, you picked a fight with honey badgers? We didn't pick the fight, Brace said quietly. We just happened to be there. Yeah, that'll do it, the military officer said. Those things are fearless. We've had them break into military installations looking for food. Went through 3 layers of security like it was nothing. We had to redesign our entire perimeter because of one badger that decided it liked our mess hall. Dr. Yara stepped forward. Secretary Martinez, we've spent considerable time studying your species and your planet. We've concluded that traditional conquest would be inadvisable. Inadvisable, Martinez repeated. That's a diplomatic way of saying suicide mission. Perhaps, Vex admitted. Your world is far more dangerous than our initial scans indicated. Your fauna is aggressive beyond reason. Your environments are extreme and varied. And your people... He paused, searching for the right words. We're stubborn, Martinez finished. We're creative. We're vengeful when provoked, and we hold grudges for generations. We're also curious, ambitious, and generally willing to work with anyone who approaches us honestly. She looked directly at Vex. So why don't you tell me honestly why you're really here, Commander? And maybe we can figure out if there's a way forward that doesn't involve anyone else getting mauled by wildlife. Vex felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, perhaps. Or maybe just respect for this human's directness. "We need allies," he said simply. "The galaxy is larger and more dangerous than you yet realize. There are threats out there that make honey badgers look tame by comparison. But more than that, we need to understand you. Your adaptability, your resilience, your sheer refusal to accept limitations. These are traits the Zephron Empire has lost in our centuries of easy conquests. We've become soft, predictable. You," he gestured at the humans, at the desert around them, at the planet overhead. "You've remained sharp." Martinez studied him for a long moment. "You want to learn from us, and perhaps teach you in return," Vex said. "You have much to offer the galaxy. We have technology, knowledge of other species, access to resources beyond this system. Together we could build something better than either of us could alone," Martinez finished. She glanced at her fellow humans, some silent communication passing between them. Then she turned back to Vex and extended her hand. "All right, Commander, let's talk, but fair warning. We're going to have conditions." Vex looked at the hand, remembering from his cultural studies that this was a human gesture of agreement. He reached out, with his primary right hand, and grasped hers carefully, mindful of his superior strength. "I would expect nothing less," he said. They talked for hours. About trade agreements and technology exchanges. About cultural ambassadors and scientific cooperation. About defense pacts and mutual exploration. And underneath it all, underneath the formal language and diplomatic protocols, there was an understanding that hadn't been there before. Humanity wasn't prey. They weren't conquerors in waiting. They were survivors who'd clawed their way to the top of a death-world food chain through sheer determination and innovation. And the Zephron Empire, for all its power and reach, could learn something from that. As the sun climbed higher and the negotiations continued, Lieutenant Brace found himself standing next to the human military officer, both of them watching the proceedings from a respectful distance. "Your people really do have honey badgers as entertainment?" Brace asked. The officer, who'd introduced himself as Colonel Hayes, nodded. "We've got entire documentary series about them. Nature shows, viral videos, you name it. People love watching them fight things they have no business fighting." "Why?" Hayes considered the question. I think it's because they remind us of ourselves. We're not the biggest or the strongest either. We're not the fastest or the most well-armed, at least we weren't for most of our history. But we're mean when we need to be. We're stubborn, and we don't know when to quit." He glanced at Brace. "Your people fought well, for what it's worth. A lot of soldiers would have broken sooner." "We broke quickly enough," Brace said quietly. "But you came back," Hayes pointed out. "You regrouped, learned from your mistakes, and came back ready to try a different approach. That takes courage too. Different kind, but courage all the same." Brace thought about that as he watched Commander Vex and Secretary Martinez shake hands again. Smiles on both their faces. Maybe Hayes was right. Maybe courage wasn't just about facing down impossible odds with weapons and aggression. Maybe sometimes it was about knowing when to put the weapons away and try something new. "Colonel," Brace said after a moment, "what would your people have done if we'd invaded? Truthfully." Hayes was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Honestly, we'd have fought. Every man, woman, and child who could hold a weapon or throw a rock. We'd have used every dirty trick, every guerrilla tactic, every bit of local knowledge to make your occupation as costly as possible. And we wouldn't have stopped until you left or we were all dead." He looked at Brace. "But that's not the future we're choosing today. Today, we're choosing something better." "Partnership," Brace said. "Partnership," Hayes agreed. "Besides, with all the dangerous wildlife on this planet, you're going to need local guides. Can't have our new alien friends getting eaten by honey badgers their first week here." Despite himself, Brace laughed. It felt good, after weeks of nightmares and healing injuries, to laugh again. That would be appreciated, yes. 6 months later, the joint human Zephron research station was complete, built on neutral ground in what humans called Switzerland. Scientists from both species worked side by side, exchanging knowledge, comparing notes, building the foundation for a relationship that would span generations. Commander Vex, now officially Ambassador Vex, stood in the observation deck looking out at the mountains. Dr. Phoenix approached with a data tablet, a smile on her face. "You need to see this," she said. The tablet showed a video, apparently from a human entertainment network. The title read, "Aliens Visit Earth, First Contact Story." But the image was unmistakable, a honey badger with text overlaid that said, "This little guy changed the course of galactic history." "They made us into a joke," Vex asked, not sure whether to be offended or amused. "They made the honey badger into a hero," Phoenix corrected. "Watch." Vex watched as the video explained, in humorous but essentially accurate terms, how the Kalahari incident had led to peaceful first contact. It showed honey badger footage, clips of Zephron ships, interviews with Secretary Martinez, and at the end, a human narrator said, "So remember, folks, humanity made it to the stars not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because a honey badger reminded some aliens that on Earth, we don't quit, ever." "They're using our failure as an inspirational story," Vex marveled. "They're using it as a reminder of who they are," Phoenix said. "And honestly, I think they're right. Any species that can turn a predator encounter into a diplomatic success probably has what it takes to survive in the larger galaxy." Vex thought about Lieutenant Brace, now recovered and serving as a cultural liaison. About the human scientists teaching Zephron researchers about Earth's biodiversity. About the trade agreements and defense pacts and slowly growing friendship between two species who'd almost become enemies. "Perhaps the honey badger did us a favor," he said finally. "Perhaps," Phoenix agreed. "Though let's not test that theory too much. I've been studying Earth animals, and apparently honey badgers aren't even in the top 10 most dangerous species on this planet." Vex felt a chill run down his spine. "What's number 1? Phoenix grinned. "The humans themselves, obviously." And looking out at the mountains, at the beautiful and terrifying world that humanity called home, Vex had to admit she was probably right. Somewhere in the Kalahari, a honey badger dug for grubs, completely unaware that it had become a symbol of interstellar cooperation. But then again, honey badgers never really cared about such things. They had more important matters to attend to, like eating, fighting, and reminding the universe that size means nothing when you're too stubborn to lose.